Today we are going to be discussing what to do when you 3-bet before the flop, get called, and then completely miss the flop. This is something that you all struggle with. It's something a lot of people struggle with. I know you all struggle with it because you let me know in the comment section down below. I appreciate all the comments. If you're here, go ahead, say hello in the comment section. Click the like and subscribe button. This is going to be a big video. This content that you're watching today is going to be way closer to content that we have inside of PokerCoaching.com, where we go in depth on specific topics to make sure you fully understand how to play these spots. This is a spot that comes up all the time, and it gives people fits. Just to be very clear, we're discussing when someone raises, you re-raise, you 3-bet, and they call. The flop comes, and you don't have anything. And in order to understand how to play when you miss, you actually have to understand how to play with your entire range. This is a difficult concept for some people to get because I realize when you miss, you don't have anything. But you have to realize in situations like this, you actually are going to have something a large chunk of the time. Also understand that stack depth is very, very important. Because if you're playing 25 big blinds deep, there's almost no money remaining to bet, right? But if you're playing 500 big blinds deep, the pot's kind of insignificant, even though it was 3-bet before the flop, because there's still a lot of money to be put in later. In this video, we're going to be discussing specifically 60 big blinds deep, which can be extrapolated a little bit to slightly shorter, like 40, or a little bit deeper, like 100. If this was a video for PokerCoaching.com, it would be a large series where we discuss how to play 25 big blinds deep, 40 big blinds deep, 60, 80, 100, 200, etc. But we're going to keep it at 60 big blinds only today. Realize that when you 3-bet before the flop and get called, you're going to be in one of these 4 scenarios. You're either going to be in position with the range advantage. We'll discuss that in just a second. You can be in position without the range advantage. You can be out of position with the range advantage. Or you can be out of position without the range advantage. Did I say without here? Whatever. You can read. In or out, with or without. Okay. What is the range advantage? The range advantage means that if you take your entire pre-flop re-raising range and run it in an equity calculator against your opponent's entire pre-flop raising and then calling range, one of those two players is very often going to be favored based on the way their ranges interact with the flop, because both players don't have the same ranges, right? So you're going to find that if you have a decent amount of equity more than your opponent, very often you're going to want to be aggressive. And we're going to find that when you have the range advantage, you're going to be betting very frequently. As your equity gets higher and higher, say you have 65% equity against your opponent's 35, you're going to be betting every time in basically every spot. If it's closer to like 52%, then you're going to be betting some, but certainly not every time. Sometimes not all that often. Also, there's this idea of nut advantage. As you have more hands that are the effective nuts compared to your opponent that are happy playing for all the money, usually you want to be betting using a larger size. Okay? In this scenario, we're going to presume that the opponent raises, you 3-bet from in position, they call, the flop comes, and they check to you every time. Why are they checking to you every time? Well, because they lack the range advantage. From out of position without the range advantage, you do a ton of checking. And in this spot, they should be checking actually every single time. So, when should you be betting in this spot? You should actually be betting when you have the range advantage every time. Unless the flop's really, really bad. We're going to go through a few of these really, really bad spots. But this is a situation where you can bet frequently, like literally every time. And you're going to find that in terms of splitting your bet sizes, because very often you're not going to want to bet just tiny or just big, you're usually going to be betting larger with hands that are almost always good but vulnerable, as well as hands that don't like mind protection, right? And then some draws, some high equity draws and some low equity draws. So let's consider the ranges that both players are going to get to this spot with. Here on the left, we have the button re-raising range. We're going to be discussing specifically when the Lojack raises to 2.2 big blinds, 60 big blinds deep. Lojack would be under the gun if we were 6-handed. We are on the button and we make it 6, which is a fine sizing. If you make it bigger, your range should probably be a little bit different. If you make it smaller, your range should also be a little bit different. But we're going to presume a range of roughly this. Okay? We are re-raising these hands in red, roughly pocket 10s and better, ace-king, some ace-queen suited, some ace-queen offsuit, some ace-jack, ace-10, and ace-9 offsuit as bluffs. Same thing with king, queen, king-jack, king-10, and queen-jack offsuits. And then some suited aces, suited kings, and a few suited connectors as bluffs as well. So we, on the button, are going to have the range in red. That's what we're looking at today. We want to ask, how do we play our range, both our hits and our misses? The opponent is going to have the hands in green. This is the Lojack's range to raise and then it shows how they defend after they get 3-bet, okay? So they would be 4-betting the best hands, aces, kings, queens, jacks, tens, and ace king, plus a few bluffs, and they're calling with all their decent hands. They have good, strong, suited high cards, a few suited aces, ace, queen offsuit, ace, jack offsuit, king, queen offsuit, and then a lot of suited connectors and small pairs. So, using a little bit of logic right away, take a second and think about which flops should heavily favor one player over the other. Consider it. Take a second. If you look at our range, we have almost no middle cards in this region. Yeah, we have a few, but usually those are going to make like one pair, right? If you consider our opponent's range down here, though, they're going to have a lot of suited connected hands that and pairs that are connect very well with low and middle card flops. So we have to be a little bit careful, especially on middle card flops. Also, they have more connected high cards than we do. Yes, we have more of the best high cards, but they have this region in here, king, queen suited, queen 10 suited, queen jack suited, stuff like that. So some of these flops are actually going to be pretty good for our opponent. So we have to be careful in some of these scenarios. That said, when you're in position and check 2, you're going to be betting the vast majority of the time. Let's go through some examples. I'm going to show you how to read this. We are in position with the range advantage. The Lojack raises to 2.2. We 3-bet the button to 6. The Lojack calls. Flop comes ace of spades, queen of hearts, 7 of diamonds, and they check to us. These are all going to presume they check to us because they should be checking every time. So, in this scenario, I'm going to show you how to read this. First, we have our betting options at the top of the screen. I gave the solver 4 bet size options plus the option to check. The way you read this is bet 36 means bet 3.6 big blinds. Put a decimal before the 6. Then we have bet 8.7, bet 14.5, and bet 54, which is all in. The pot here is 14.5 big blinds, right? Because the opponent, well, we both put in 6 preflops, so that's 12, plus the small blind to big blind. And the ante, it's 14.5. So 3.6 and 14.5 is a tiny bet, right? Tiny, tiny bet, 25% pot. A lot of people never bet 25% pot. They think the only option is to bet half pot or bigger. You'll find that's often a mistake. 3.6 big blinds is a nice 25% pot bet. To be fair, maybe even smaller is ideal in some of these scenarios. You could go back and you could rerun this using perhaps 8.7 as your bigger bet size, or maybe 12 big blinds as a big bet size. Run it with 12 and 8.7 and 6 and 3.6 and 1 and see what the solver spits out. Now look, I'm all about playing a strategy that is implementable without giving up too much equity. So you're going to find that I'm usually recommending 1 or 2 bet sizes. I don't think you need to go nuts with 17 bet sizes, but you want to make sure you're using reasonable bet sizes that actually are good. What a lot of the programs out there do that you can subscribe to or download or whatever is they pre-solve a lot of spots, but they give you the option of half pot or check. And that output would be very different than this one. Or maybe they give the options of all in or half pot or check. Or they give pot or half pot or check. Essentially, they don't necessarily solve scenarios using ideal sizes. And you want to make sure you are using ideal sizes within reason. Again, don't get too bogged down in it. Don't go nuts with trying to memorize that on ace, queen, 7, maybe 25% pot's ideal. But on ace, jack, 6, maybe 18% pot's ideal. Don't get bogged down. I'm trying to show you implementable strategies here today. Okay, so as we see in this scenario, we're betting everything. I realize the colors may be slightly close, but if you take a look at the hands that like to bet 8.7 big blinds, which is about 60% pot, that's going to be a lot of your hands that are almost always good, but vulnerable to being outdrawn. That's going to be ace-king, ace-jack, and ace-10. These hands are betting large a lot. Also, you're going to want to mix in some hands that are, call them protection bets. Take a look at pocket jacks, 10s, 9s, 7-6. These are hands that are also betting large a decent chunk of the time. And then we're going to mix that in with some bluffs. We have 5-4, just nothing. Betting big sometimes. 6-5, betting big sometimes. Also, some gut shots. King Jack, King 10, King 9 every once in a while. And I think that's fine and good. That said, again, if you want to make your life easy, if you look at a solver output like this in this scenario and you see that you're betting the 3.6 big blinds the vast majority of the time, maybe not exactly in this spot, maybe if the number's more like 75%, then just bet 3.6 with everything. It's going to be fine. You're not giving up much equity at all, and you're going to be playing it perfectly. Using mixed strategies is very difficult, and as you actually try to implement more and more bet sizes, it's going to become close to impossible for us mere humans, unless you are a super duper genius. And I'm certainly not a super duper genius, and for that reason, I try to use strategies that I can reasonably implement. So this is one flop. We're going to go through a bunch of flops. Buckle up. We may be here for a while. King 3-2. Same spot. Lojack raises, we 3-bet button. They call. Flop comes king 3-2 with a flush draw. They check. Now, again, same story. We're betting frequently and small. Notice that the hands that are betting big when we do bet big, ace, king, and king, queen a lot, right? Plus some bluffs with random overcards, suited connected hands, etc. Notice that we are not betting big with hands like queens, jacks, 10s, 9s, 8s, because while these are very likely good, they don't need quite as much protection, because if the opponent does have, let's say, jack 10 of diamonds, they're just going to fold to a flop bet, even if it is small, right? Anyway, this is a spot where now you see this small bet size of 3.6 big blinds, 25% pot is creeping up to like 73%. I would just bet small every time. I think that's fine. Let's take a look at jack 10-6. Another flop where we have all the good high cards. Yes, the opponent is going to connect a little bit better with this board. And notice, because the opponent will connect a little bit better with this board, and the board is relatively dynamic, meaning there are a lot of hands in the opponent's range that could improve to beat our hands that are good at the moment, like ace, jack, pocket queens, etc. In spots like this, you're usually going to be betting using a larger size more often. Now, take a look at the hands that want to use the larger bet size. That's going to be very clearly pocket aces, pocket kings, pocket queens, ace jack, and king jack. These hands are almost always good, but there are a lot of bad turn cards, right? Because the opponent could easily have the various high cards that connect well with this board, right? Like say they have king queen, queen jack for a pair and backdoor straight draw, ace queen for, you know, overcards with straight draw, right? All these hands have very, very good equity. And they also won't fold to a bet most of the time. So we want to just get money in the pot. Also, we're going to mix in some bluffs. We have open-ended straight draws. Actually, we don't have open-ended straight draws. We have some king queen betting big. We have king 9 suited betting big for a gut shot. We have 8-7 suited betting big with a gut shot. Then we have these random overcards with backdoor flush draws betting big a large chunk of the time. Okay? But a very common pattern you're going to see is hands that are almost always good but vulnerable often result in betting big. Okay? Next, what about 10-6-3? This is an interesting board because, yes, we still have the range advantage, but if you consider the opponent's range, it's going to have a lot of medium strength hands and overcards that have some equity. So now, again, our hand becomes, or a lot of our range becomes very vulnerable, even our overpairs, right? So notice, we are betting using the 8.7 size almost every time. On these low connected boards where we still do have a nice range advantage, and our overpairs are just like really good, usually you're going to be betting using a larger size in these spots. Because our opponent's going to connect pretty well with the board, but our strong hands still crush their decent hands, right? The opponent's going to have a lot of one pairs like a 10, and notice we have a lot of the best 10s and better, right? And so now we just get to load money in the pot. We also have a lot of draws that have decent equity, like 9-8 and 8-7 suited that can just blast and load money in. Hands like 7-6 can bet big, and 6-5, they don't mind getting protection against the various overcards. So using some logic, you can see that this is a pretty nice spot to bet using a larger size. But again, I want to make it clear, we're betting every time, right? Here's another one. Flop comes 6-3-2. You may say, this is a very dynamic board. There's a flush draw and straight draws available. But again, consider the opponent's range, right? On 6-3-2, look, they have almost nothing. Yeah, they have some overpairs, but our overpairs crush their overpairs. They have overcards, but our overcards crush their overcards, right? Like, really, they don't have a whole lot. They have a little bit, but not a whole lot. So this is a spot where now we're, again, going to bet frequently, but reverting back to the small size because our range is just absolutely crushing theirs. But they do have some super nut hands in their range that we have to be slightly cautious against. I want to make it clear. The video is about how to play when you miss the flop. But again, you have to understand how to play your entire range. So right here, we actually do have a lot of misses. But the answer is bet, because we have a big range advantage. Just bet everything. We're going to discuss how to play when you get raised in a minute, too. It's an in-depth video. What about paired boards, 9-4-4? Well, on 9-4-4, again, consider the opponent's range. They have almost no fours. We have almost no fours. They have no overpairs, and we have a lot of overpairs. So now we are absolutely crushing their range. And again, consider the stuff that they're likely to have. They're going to have a lot of ace highs and a lot of pairs. Well, ace highs and pairs can't really go around folding on 9-4-4. So you're going to see that we are going to be betting big with all of our overpairs, right? And we need to mix in some bluffs, which is going to be a lot of king high, a lot of weaker ace high, right? All these hands are betting using the bigger size. And this is actually a board where we have a pretty big nut advantage, or an effective nut advantage, right? And for that reason, we are going to bet using the bigger size. As you have a bigger nut advantage, you typically bet bigger. And as you have a range advantage, you bet a lot. Okay, what about when we're in position without the range advantage? Your opponent checks you, you're really only going to want to check back on boards that are really, really bad for your range, which is going to be mostly middle connected boards, okay? That said, you're not checking back every single time. You are still going to bet, but now we're going to be betting polarized. A polarized range is usually our best hands, especially those that are vulnerable to being outdrawn, and draws. You know, before we move forward, one thing I wanted to show you is that when we were betting using the larger size in basically every scenario earlier, we're usually not betting the largest size using our super nuts. Super nuts often bet tiny because you want to protect your range. Again, we're talking in GTO world here. You need to protect your range. So on ace, queen, 7, pocket aces uses the 3.6 big blind size, even though it is very good. It's very good, but it's not that vulnerable to being outdrawn. King 3-2, I can tell you, kings is going to be betting tiny, right? Jack 10-6, jacks and 10s, betting tiny. 10-6-3, 10s, betting tiny, right? 6-3-2, doesn't really apply. 9-4-4, 9s will be betting tiny, right? Okay, keep that in mind as we move forward, because you're going to find that we may slow play with some very good hands, which will feel a little bit dirty to you. So, Lojack raises 2.2, we 3-bet to 6, Lojack calls, Jack 7-3 with a flush draw. They check. Okay, when you are betting in this spot, we essentially do still have a lot of very good nut hands in our range, right? But on Jack 10 or Jack 7-3, they're gonna have a lot of draws and a lot of pairs, right? So we're gonna be betting big, but we cannot get away with betting every time. Now, if you showed me this output and asked me to make this as implementable as I could for someone who doesn't want to study a ton, I would still say bet every time. It's not that big of a deal. You're not gonna be losing a ton of equity by betting every time. But if you look at the hands that do start to check, these are hands that are medium strength. So what's medium strength on Jack 7-3? Well, it's going to be under pairs, right? So we have 10s checking, 9s, 8-7, 7-6, ace-3, pocket 6s, ace-king, ace-queen, right? These are all the medium strength hands. And even then, notice, you're still betting a large chunk of the time in this scenario because we have aces, kings, queens, ace-jack, king-jack in our range that are happy to put money in the pot. When you do start to develop a checking range, though, I want to make it crystal clear. You must protect your checking range by checking back with some hands that you know you're just not folding. And in this scenario, that's going to be pocket jacks, king jack. You're not really trying to fold hands like pocket 10s or 8-7. The goal with these hands is to play a small or medium pot. Big hands want to play big pots. Small and medium hands want to play small pots, especially when you are not advantaged. Let's take a look at a much more clear scenario, though. 9-8-7 or 8-7-6 or 7-6-5. These are boards that's going to connect very well with the opponent to the point that now we lack the nut advantage because they have all the sets and they have some 2 pairs and we do not, right? So now in this scenario, we're going to be betting way less often. We're checking 42% of the time, and because we lack the nut advantage, like even pocket aces is not loving it, when we do bet, we're now going to be betting small. So when you have the nut advantage, like on Jack 7-3, because then aces are way better than on 9-8-7, we're betting using a big size, whereas on 8-7-6, or 9-8-7, 8-7-6, all those boards like that, we're going to be betting way less often and using a small size. This is the main type of board where I would strongly recommend you study these spots and develop a checking range. All the other spots, though, in position, kind of deep stacked, you can bet frequently, small or big, based on how big your nut advantage is, essentially how good your over pairs are. And that informs how you're playing all of your misses when you have nothing, right? If you're betting everything, well, that includes all your nothing, life's easy. You may say, couldn't you say that in 1 second? Yes, but I want to show you why, right? And I also want to show you how to use different bet sizes. We're not trying to teach super basic poker here. All right, on 9-8-7, what are we doing with our misses? Well, what is a miss on 9-8-7 in our range? That's going to be king, queen, ace-2, ace-3, ace highs. It's important to realize that hands like ace-king are way better than hands like ace-3 in general because ace-king can just check it down and win, whereas ace-3 doesn't win so often. And you'll see this come into play, especially with stuff like king-queen. Notice king-queen is betting small and frequently, because if you bet and your opponent folds out their ace-high, that's great. You win. Also, there are various turn cards that let you continue bluffing, like a jack or a 10. Those are going to be pretty good to keep betting. Notice we are checking it back with aces some portion of the time, and kings and queens, but never with jacks and 10s. This may be surprising to you, but jacks and 10s need way more protection than aces, right? 10s is somewhat vulnerable to being outdrawn, whereas aces is not quite as vulnerable. Now, I do realize that jacks and 10s also have a draw, and when a draw, you typically do bet more often, so that probably comes into play as well. But it's important to note. Also note you are checking back 9s and 8s and 7s for sets some portion of the time. Feels gross, but that is what you need to do, because if you look at the rest of our checking range, it's pretty weak. It's going to be a lot of ace highs. We are checking back some ace 9, ace 8, ace 7, some nines and stuff in general. But we need to protect the ace highs because we really don't want the opponent blasting off on the turn in the river and making us fold all of our marginal range. And what a lot of people do wrong is they only check back with ace highs and king highs. And then when their opponent bets the turn, they just fold everything. And if you ever find a spot in your strategy where if it goes check, check, and your opponent bets and you fold everything, like if that exists in your range and in your strategy, you're going to get crushed by players who are good. Because they're going to realize you're betting all your good stuff, you're checking all your bad stuff, and then you're super easy to play against, which is why you want to make sure your ranges for all bet sizes and for checking are at least somewhat protected with some strong hands in each. All right, what do we do when we get check raised? We bet and we get check raised. Well, the answer is pretty easy in this spot. You want to fold unless you have something. Fortunately, in most of these scenarios, you're going to have a lot of pretty good hands when you do bet. When you are in position, you rarely re-raise, unless you're almost always good but vulnerable. That's going to go back to hands like top pair, top kicker, sometimes re-raise. When you bet small, say you bet 3.6 and they make it like 12, sometimes you click it back to like 25 instead of shoving, which feels fun, but essentially 20, 25 is close enough to all in, plus you get to include a few more trashy bluffs that way. All pairs on the board usually continue when check raised in GTO world. Pocket pairs, not so much. Like say the board is jack 8, 3. If you have any pair on the board, a jack and 8 or a 3, and you get check raised, you're calling. But like pocket fives will not, because pocket fives only has 2 outs to improve, whereas like ace 3 on jack 8, 3 can pick up an ace 4, 3, right? Decent draws and better are always going to continue. Like bad gut shots will fold, but like gut shots with overcards, flush draws, backdoor flush draws with overcards, those hands are usually continuing unless the raise size is very big. As your opponents do raise larger and larger, you're going to want to fold more often. Fortunately, if they check and you bet 3.6, a lot of people just make it 3 times your bet. They think that's what they're supposed to do, which is not good. But they make it 3 times your bet because that's what they read in some old antiquated poker book. And if you make it 3.5 and they make it 10, you can call with a lot. Because remember, you're putting in now 6.5 to try to win 34. You need to realize 20% equity in position. It's hard to not realize 20% equity in position with anything, right? Exploitatively, though, you may want to overfold. Now, why would I recommend overfolding? If your opponent's not going to check raise bluff with nearly as many draws as they should, and their range contains far more made hands, your made hands that are likely dominated, like top pair bad kicker, go way down in value. So if your opponent's kind of weak, kind of tight, kind of straightforward, you may want to exploitatively overfold. And on the other side of the coin, if you're playing against someone who does 3-bet a decent amount, continuation bet every time using a small size, and they know to exploitatively overfold, you may want to check raise really aggressively against them, which is kind of fun. But unless you have something, when you miss, fold. Get out of the way. It's okay. Let's take a look at an example real quick. Let's say you did have king-queen on 9-8-7. Fold. If you had king-jack, though, probably not, unless they make it big. What about on 9-4-4? If you have the king-8, fold. It's okay. If you have ace-2, maybe you got to stick around, but probably fold, right? Get out of the way. 10-6-3. If you have king-jack for just 2 overcards, fold. What about on ace-queen-7? If you have 6-5, fold. If you have king-jack, though, you probably got to call because it's a gut shot to the nuts. Okay? Nice and easy, nothing fancy. When you miss and you get check raised, fold. All right. So far, we've been looking at the easy spot. Now we got to put on our adult pants, and we're going to be doing the harder section. So get your pants on. All right. You got them on. We're ready. We're ready to do the studying. You're going to have to check far more often from out of position compared to in position. Because, first off, the ranges interact a little bit differently. But when you're out of position across the board, you have to check far more often because you don't control the size of the pot quite as much. So, in general, we're going to give some blanket rules first, and we're going to show some spots to confirm this. Uncoordinated flops result in frequent betting because pairs are pretty good on uncoordinated flops. Again, bet larger when you have the nut advantage and bet smaller when you do not. We're going to see this very clearly in a lot of these scenarios. Also, you're going to want to be betting larger with hands that are almost always good, but need protection, as we discussed earlier. But you want to make sure you mix in draws of all sorts of strengths for balance purposes. Okay? We're going to be looking at a tough spot to play. Not an easy one. We're not making it easy on you today. Like I said, this is closer to the content at Poker Coaching. We're teaching you how to get in there and battle. Okay, button raises to 2.2, 60 big blinds deep. We're in the small blind. We make it 10, and the button calls. Okay, take a look at our 3-betting range. Most of you here are not 3-betting this range. Most good pros don't even 3-bet this range. They make this blunder right off the bat. They 3-bet far too linearly and only with the best hands. But take a look at all these hands in red. Pocket 7s and better, right? Lots of suited aces. Ace-9 offsuit and better. And then a smattering of marginal, junky stuff. Lots of suited connected hands in this region, as you see, like Jack-10 suited, 10-9 suited, 9-8 suited, 10-8 suited. Also, suited Ace-X, suited King-X, and then a few offsuit big cards. King, Queen, King, Jack, King 10, Queen 10, some portion of the time. Okay, so we're starting with a pretty wide range. I definitely recommend you do this. I think if anything, in most games, most players raise the button too wide. And then, when they get 3-bet to 10 big blinds, which is the size you should be using, they fold a lot. Take a look at what they should be calling with. If they continue tighter than this, you are going to run them over with this strategy. So what should they be calling with? Notice they should slow play aces, and then just like a whole lot of stuff. Queen 3 suited and better. Put yourself in your opponent's shoes. You raise the button to 2.2. The big blind the small blind makes it 10. Are you calling 7.8 more with Queen 3 suited? Most people do not. What about Jack 7 suited, 10-6 suited, 8-5 suited, 5-3 suited, 4-3 suited, Ace-5 offsuit even? Ugh, yuck. I would say, for simplicity, to make your life easier, you can probably fold out the bottom cusp of this entire range, like Queen 3 suited, Queen 4 suited, 10-6 suited, 8-5 suited, 5-3 suited, Ace-5 offsuit, 10-9 offsuit, maybe Ace-8 offsuit. But everything else like really needs to be continued. And most people do not continue with this range. Notice also we have very little 4-betting because we are in position. In position, you just typically don't do a whole lot of re-raising unless you're very shallow. So we see Queen Jack suited in 10s and 2s and pocket 8s and Ace King sometimes are ripping it all in for 60. A lot of people probably shove far too wide here. They probably shove all Ace Kings, Queens, Jacks, 10s, 9s, 8s, probably never Queen 10, Queen Jack suited or pocket 2s, because most people don't play anywhere near GTO, which is good for you. If you play closer to GTO and your opponent's blundering left and right, you're going to smash them. Notice almost no small 4-betting. When you do 4-bet small, probably something like 23 big blinds, it's going to be with just super duper good hands plus a few blocker bluffs. Okay? Fun Queen 2 suited down here hanging out. So anyway, we're presuming we're playing against 2 GTO ranges. But I will say, if your opponent's range is tighter on the button, because they don't call quite enough, you actually have to play more passively than what I'm about to show you from the small blind, because the opponent's range is going to be better, right? If you're against a better range, you actually have to play even more tight than I'm about to show you. And the ranges or the strategies I'm about to show you are going to be quite cautious. So keep that in mind as we move forward. Okay. Out of position with the range advantage. Button makes it 2.2, small blind makes it 10, button calls, flop comes 9-4-4. Paired boards are great because overcards are great. Now, we have different bet size options here. Okay? We have bet 51, bet, call it 20, bet 12, and bet 5. Remember, in this scenario now, the pot is what? 22 big blinds, roughly. Okay? Pot's 22 big blinds. So, bet 5 is still about 25% pot, right? You're going to find that we are going to be typically using split sizes more often as we are shallower and shallower to some extent. But again, take a look at this. This is just a spot where we are heavily favored, and you have to ask, why are we heavily favored? Well, consider our range on 9-4-4. We have lots of pairs. We have some 9s. Our ace highs are pretty good. They beat the opponent's ace highs. And very importantly, the opponent just has a lot of trash, right? Lots of king highs, queen highs, jack highs, whatever. So we get to bet every time in this scenario. Notice the hands that are using the large size. Pocket 10s, pocket jacks, pocket queens, king 9, ace 9, queen 9, jack 9, all the 9s. Even small and medium pairs like 8, 7, 6s, those can go for a large size. And then a smattering of bluffs. All right, we see some low ace highs. We see some king highs. We see cards that wrap around the 9 are quite good to go for a big size, like jack 8 suited. It's a pretty good one. So we're using 2 sizes here. All the other stuff's going to be betting small. But again, how do you play with your misses? Well, what is a miss here? Is ace jack a miss? I don't know. Not really. Is king queen a miss? King queen's pretty good. Is king 8 a miss? Yes. What about king 5? And notice the answer is not bet small with all of them or bet big with all of them. King 5 bets big every time, whereas King Queen bets small every time, or most of the time. And this is something you're going to have to work to implement, right? You're typically going to find the worst kickers with a high card go for the bigger size. And you're going to find that these hands in this region often get a little bit naughty. King 5 gets naughty a lot. Ace 3 gets naughty a lot. Whereas, with a big bet size. Whereas hands like King Queen, not so much. And Queen Jack, not so much. Those go for the smaller size. Okay, let's make it more difficult. What about King 3, 2? We have the range advantage, but now notice we're starting to check. Remember the previous spot? This was a great one for us. We were betting every time. The problem is that we are out of position with a bunch of the middle cards in our range. Remember, all these cards in this region were not in our range when we were 3-betting from in position earlier. From out of position, though, these hands all exist. And all these hands are trash, right? So, with your absolute trash air balls, as you start checking more often, these absolute trash air balls do start to check. Just check fold. So like 9-8 of diamonds on King 3, 2, no diamonds. Just check folds. Get out of the way. It's okay. If it has literally no potential whatsoever, it's usually okay to get out of the way. Notice we are protecting our checking range by checking with some good hands. What are good hands? Well, pairs. A lot of pairs. Well, aces, kings, queens, jacks, ace, king. Like all of our best hands are checking some portion of the time. Now again, this is a spot where I think it's probably fine just to bet small every time for 25% pot. We're only checking 10% of the time. I don't think it's that big of a deal. Just want to show you this spot to let you know, even on this board, we're not like drastically favored to the point we can bet everything. What about ace, queen, 7? Now we see strategy starts to get a little bit dicier. Like I said, out of position is tough. Now we're checking 19% of the time, which is like a real amount. Okay, so you probably should be checking some portion of the time here. We're betting 25% pot, 60%, and we're betting pot, which we have not done yet, 18%. Notice we do have 60% pot 3% of the time. I would just put all those in the pot size bet and call it a day for simplicity. So first, let's look at what wants to bet big. So we can logically start adding this to our strategy. Hands that are almost always good but vulnerable. We'll say it a million times. Hands that are almost always good but vulnerable often like to bet big. Ace, king, ace, jack, ace, 10. Ace, king, ace, jack, and ace, 10. Often going big. Then, some draws. Some high equity, some low equity. We see king 10 and jack 10 going big sometimes. Then we see these hands in this region, our total junkers that have backdoor flush draws are going to be going big. So jack 9, 10 9, 9 8, 10 8. These hands seem to really like going big a large chunk of the time. Okay? Also notice queen 7 is betting big a lot of the time because it's good but vulnerable. It's kind of like ace king, right? Whereas aces, queens, and 7s are actually betting small or checking. Again, when you check, as you're going to do a lot from out of position, you must protect your checking range. I cannot make it any more clear. You got to protect your checking range, especially with hands that are almost always good that you know you're never, ever, ever, ever folding. Okay, what are we doing with our misses? Again, like I said, the low trash misses, we're often betting using a kind of big size. Not always, but sometimes. But they are getting bet in this spot because when we are betting big, our range is really good. So we can mix in some really low equity bluffs. Our small bet size is often coming from a large mix of, call them bluffs, like, king 5, king 3, stuff like that. But we do see a lot of those types of hands still betting because we are still betting a large chunk of the time in the spot. If I had to develop a checking range, if you want to typically look at the hands that are checking a lot. So aces, jacks, king highs that don't have a whole lot of backdoor equity, like king 9, king 8. Bad ace X, right? We see like ace 4, ace 3, ace 2 checking a lot. And then under pairs, like 9s and 8s. These are hands that are, sometimes good, but certainly not loving it. Same thing with jacks, right? And I think doing that's probably going to be pretty nice. What about ace, jack, 9? So we just looked at ace, queen, 7. But logically, think about it. Is ace, jack, 9 going to make you check more or less than ace, queen, 7? What do you think? They may look similar, but they're different. Ace, jack, 9 has a few more draws available. As there are a few more draws available, you're going to be betting more polarized and checking more often. Typically, when you're betting more polarized, where you're just your best hands and draws, you're going to be checking more often across the board. Okay? So notice now we're checking 25% instead of 20. And our bigger bet size is used more often. On ace, queen, 7, we were betting 25% pot a lot. Whereas on ace, jack, 9, we're betting 60% pot a lot. Because the board is more dynamic. There are more straight draws available on ace, jack, 9 than ace, queen, 7, right? So now notice we are checking again some hands that are super nuts, like aces, jacks, and nines, right? Also some medium strength hands like kings, queens, king highs, and then everything else is betting. So notice again the bigger bet size. Pot is loving to be used with ace king and ace queen. Almost always good, but vulnerable. And then some trash. What is trash here? Looks like jack 9 bets big too, which makes sense. Bottom 2 pair likes to bet big a lot because you don't block your opponent's top pair. But we see like 8-6 suited, 7-6 suited, 8-7 suited, queen 9 suited, queen 6 suited. Real junkers. Real junkers are betting big in the spot for pot, along with very good hands, right? And that's what you want to be doing. So when you have these low equity misses in these scenarios, you often do want to be using the bigger bet sizes. Notice the middle pairs are checking a lot. Like a lot of our jacks are going to check a decent chunk at the time. Not always, but a decent chunk. We are still in pretty good shape here. Like I said, we do have the range advantage. We're in pretty good shape. But notice the total misses on the bottom are often going for bets. And the marginal stuff like king high is often checking because king high has some showdown value, right? So nice common stuff. What about 6-3-2? This is a fun one. We're going to be checking some portion of the time here as well. And again, we see the same pattern as before. We're betting very frequently using big sizes with our hands that are almost always good but vulnerable. 9s, 8s, and 7s, maybe ace 6, right? If we have it. And then we're betting small with everything else because we do have a nice range advantage in general in this spot, but we are protecting our checking range still. You always got to protect your checking range by checking stuff like aces, kings, queens that are very, very good. But lots of small betting in this scenario with some big, pot size or 60% pot size bets being used. In this spot, though, if you wanted to make your life easy, I would say it's probably fine just to use always a small bet. But like 9s, 8s, and 7s really do benefit from getting your opponent to fold out overcards. So those do go for a bigger size. Also notice all of your 6s for top pair, at least most of your 6s are going for the bigger size as well. Well, the 60% pot size, not the pot size, but 60% pot. All the misses, though, ones that have some showdown value do some checking. Ace high and king high, good king high. All the other ones are betting unless they're just real trash, like 10-9, jack 9, right? These hands that are just real trash, as we check more and more often, you'll find these hands often start checking it back, especially, or checking. You're not checking it back, you're checking because you're out of position. But you're checking because they're just not that good. If you bet and get called, you're just smashed. So you get to give up sometimes. All right, what about out of position without the range advantage? Connected middle and high card flops are going to result in a lot of checking. You may be surprised to see high card flops resulting in some checking. But if they are connected, if you consider the opponent's range, look at all these high cards they have, right? They have all of this. And we have a lot of it too, but they have a lot of it as well. So we're going to be doing a decent amount of checking on those boards. And now, as you're betting less often, you're going to be doing a whole lot more betting using a large size with a very clearly polarized range. Okay? Let's take a look at 10-6-3. Earlier, this was a fine board for us. Now, it's starting to get a little bit worse. But we do still see big bets being used. Well, we're going to see mostly big bets being used in these. Not always, but mostly. As long as you still have some hands that are effective nuts, like overpairs. So kings, queens, jacks, betting big. As we're checking a lot, 38% here. We need to protect the checking range. So aces, 10s, 6s, doing some checking, right? But again, a lot of our hands are just going to be betting in this scenario, especially the hands that have a little bit of equity, like king high, queen high, jack high, especially the ones that wrap around or are right near the 10. So we see like queen jack betting a decent chunk, right? And king jack betting a decent chunk. Whereas now some of the really junkers like king 5 or 8-7, these are not betting quite so often. Also notice a lot of our checking range comes from the medium strength hands, like 6s. 6s are checking a lot. 3s are checking a lot. Ace high is checking a lot, especially the good ones, right? So we're betting the naughty ones over here, like ace 4, but we're not betting so much with hands like ace jack, because ace jack has decent equity. You can just check call or check down and win, right? What about 9-8-7? A terrible flop for us. We're going to be checking a ton. Notice we're going to be betting super polarized now, and when we do bet, we're going to be very, very, very... Well, we're going to be way inclined to use big bets. So now notice on 9-8-7, we're betting small, never. When we do bet, though, we're betting with a very strong range when we happen to bet, and for that reason, we'll be using big sizes. Notice we actually start to use an all-in size. 3 times pot. 3 times pot. Hello, wake up. Are you still here? Is anybody awake? If you're awake, say something in the comment section below. Click the like button. Click the subscribe button. Let me know if you're learning anything. Which hands are almost always good but vulnerable on 9-8-7? Well, that's going to be queens, Jacks, maybe. Notice jacks actually doesn't shove. Tens, maybe. Kings, maybe. And then some draws. What are draws on this board? Well, it looks like ace-jack loves to shove. Oh, ace-9 obviously is almost always good but vulnerable. Some tens. King-10 loves to shove. And then pair plus draw. All right, pair plus draw is going to love to shove. So we have jack-8, 10-8, 10-7. So these are hands that, have lots of equity. So those are shoving. Now, this shove is about 11% of your range. Maybe you don't want to use that. Maybe you only want to use pot size bet. But look, I think shoving's fine. I think I said it's 3 times pot. It's only 2.5 times pot. That's my bad. Before everyone says in the comment section, you can't count. Pot's 22. We're shoving 50. Only 2 times pot. Gosh, I really can't count. Please forgive me. This has been a long video. So what's checking here? Well, a lot of stuff. All of our marginal stuff's checking. We're protecting it by checking some nuts. Notice jack, 10, 9s, 8s, 7s, all check a lot of the time. A lot of top pairs checking, right? Our medium top pairs. We have to do a lot of checking in this spot because our opponent's going to have a whole lot of nuts here. When we miss, we're just checking and check folding a lot. It's not our board. Not a good spot for us. Ace-4 can't even get naughty. Just has to check fold. Ace-3 and Ace-2 still do, though. What about Jack 7-3? Also a lot of checking. Now, we're going to be using smaller sizes because, we don't need nearly as much protection in this scenario. So we see a very, very mixed strategy. This is often what you end up seeing when you are out of position in general. Like if you raise from the Lojack and the button calls, you got to do a lot of checking and your range starts to look like this. And we are going to be putting in check raises sometimes. We'll be taking a look at some of these spots in a minute. But now you check a lot of stuff and you bet a lot of stuff. You're often going to be checking with your medium strength hands. Like a lot of 7s are going to check. Our 3s are going to check, right? Pocket pairs are going to be checking a lot. Good ace high is going to be checking a lot. And then logical draws are going to be betting more often than illogical draws. Like say 10-9 here is betting some. Again, I realize it's not a lot, but it's some. Whereas like 9-6 are just nothing's checking and check folding. Okay? So this is a board that connects very well with the opponent's range. When you get a flop that's good for the opponent's range, you just got to play really, really cautiously. King 10-3. You may think this is a board that we should not be checking a lot on, but again, the opponent's going to have a whole lot of good, strong, high connected cards. And it turns out King 10-3 nails that. However, we do still have a nice nut advantage here because aces, ace-king, king-queen, king-jack, king-9 even. These are hands that are very, 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 very good and can load money in. So now we are potting it or checking because we don't really have much of a range advantage, but we do have a nice nut advantage. And you can see we're potting it with, well, those hands, right? Good kings and better. And then some draws. What are draws on ace 10-3? That's going to be some flush draws. A lot of these hands down here that are potting it, 9-8, 9-8 is 9-8 of spades. We have some queen 8 of spades and hearts blasting it. We got lots of ace-x blasting it. We have the ace-2 for fun. All of them. Pot. Pretty strong. Over here with ace-9, ace-8, ace-7, these are going to be with a spade. And the ace of spades, maybe with the 8 of spades as well, of course. And everything else is checking. So total junk here, just checks. Checks and folds. Not a good flop. But if you do have some sort of backdoor equity or a really good made hand, you're blasting. Jack 10-6, similar board where the jack and the 10 line up very, very well with the opponent. We're checking 70% of the time here. This may seem crazy to you, but 70% checks. Now we do start to see some all-ins again. I've actually covered this spot in a previous video where we showed that ace, jack, and king, queen love shoving for all of it. So we do see in this scenario exactly that. Ace, jack, and king, queen loves the shove. But again, we are betting just our best hands that are vulnerable. Looks like king, jack, and better. Some draws, like king 9, king 8. We're blasting it with some low backdoor flush draws, like ace 3, ace 2, and king 3. This is something a lot of people don't do. Notice, though, like king 7 is doing a lot of checking, whereas king 3 is blasting it. And you're going to find this is a very common pattern. This little region in this corner, the top right-hand corner, loves to bluff. It loves to bluff. It can't help itself. Especially when you have draws you don't really want to bet and then fold to a raise. Like 8-7, for example, or 9-8. You don't really want to bet this and fold if you get raised, right? So don't bet it. Whereas king-queen doesn't mind betting because you're betting it and you're just not folding it because king-queen's great. One more. King 9-3, all spades. 3 flush card boards from out of position result in lots of checks. And when you do bet, you don't go too big ever. We are going 60% pot, but we're certainly not using the bigger bets in the spot. Again, same story, betting best hands plus hands that are vulnerable. Notice again, ace 5, ace 4, ace 2. Getting frisky. These are with like ace 2 of diamonds. Literally all ace 2s are betting here. So I want to make it clear that you are not just only betting with flushes or flush draws. These in this region that are betting are all flushes. and they were betting a lot of ace high, king high, queen high, or ace high, queen high, jack high with a spade. Again, the misses just get out of the way. Notice the checking range is decently protected with a lot of kings, right? So lots of kings are checking, but a lot of our total trash is just checking too. Like if you have 10-8 of hearts, you're just check folding. All right, now let's discuss the scenario where you check and face a bet. If you do bet, by the way, and get raised, just continue when you have something. Same story as before. When you check and face a bet, though, as you're going to do a lot of the time, right? Like on this board, we're checking 60% of the time. You're going to want to check raise polarized with your best hands that are vulnerable and draws, right? You're typically going to want to check call all pairs and most other draws. Now, again, the pocket pairs that are quite bad sometimes may fold, but like a pair on the board or draw is good. And as your opponent bets larger and larger, you're going to want to fold more and more often. You're going to find that against a small bet from the opponent, like 25% pot, you're going to call with 80 or continue with 80-ish% of hands. Against a bigger bet like half pot, you're going to continue with about 60% of hands, give or take. Let's go through some examples, and then we'll be done. Only 46-minute long video. Good, we kept it less than an hour. Maybe. So out of position with range advantage, ignore that. All right, ace, queen, 7. So this is where button raises, we 3-bet small blind to 10. They call. Flop comes, ace, queen, 7. We check. What are we checking? Well, we're checking all these hands that are still in our range. Notice that we're missing a lot of hands because we would have bet a lot of hands here. Facing a 4.9 big blind bet, 25% pot. We call a lot. Like I said, notice here, we're folding 20% of the time. Like I just said, what are we folding? Only our trash. Notice I said that some pocket pairs that are not good at all will be folding. So notice like pocket 8s and pocket 9s, a little bit of folds. The total junk just folds, like king 9. If you checked it, you just check fold. Jack 8, just check fold. If you don't have anything, you fold. Lots of other stuff calls, though. And we do have a check raising range, not a big one, but 9%, and that's going to be our best hands that are vulnerable, plus some draws. Same story. Ace, king, ace, queen, ace, jack, ace 10, check raising and playing for all the money. And then some draws. Now, this is where it gets a little bit dicey, because sometimes kind of hard to find draws. You're going to find that at this stack depth, quite often draws are going to come from bottom pair. It's a little bit fun. And notice that's exactly what's happening. 9-7 and 8-7 are check raising some portion of the time. Really, all your 7s are check raising some portion of the time. I realize a7 and queen 7 are the nuts, so those check raise too. You may also check raise with some gut shots every once in a while, like those king jack and king 10 check raise a little bit. But you do want to implement a check raising strategy. What a lot of people do wrong, let's go back up to this spot. Where did it go? Here it is. A lot of people, when they do check, they check far too marginal. Like they never check ace king or ace queen or ace jack or ace 7 or queen 7. And then when they do face a bet, they have no hands that can check raise, which is why it's very, very important to make sure you are protecting your checking range. Now you may notice, what about pocket aces? Are we raising aces? Absolutely not. Or queens. 7s raises, but aces and queens do not raise because you block your opponent's continuing range hard, and you're almost always good, but not all that vulnerable to being outdrawn. So you're going to find that, again, you want to continue protecting your check calling range. And you do that by containing some weaker top pairs that, again, you know you're just not trying to fold, and middle pairs. But notice your check calling their bet with king jack, king 10, any pair, right? Like you're not calling 6s because you plan on calling down with 6s. So you want to make sure that at every decision point, you're continuing a large chunk of the time. What about ace jack 9 versus a bigger bet? Board's more polarized, opponent's going to be betting bigger, typically. Board's more dynamic, so the opponent's going to be betting bigger and with a more polarized range. So on this board, here's roughly our range at this point. You see we are raising not very often, just with jacks and 9s, ace 7 and ace 6 for fun. And then some bluffs. What are bluffs on ace jack 9? We have some gut shots, it looks like, in this spot. Just king 10. Not a lot, right? Not a lot of bluffs here because our value raising range is also not very big. Very small value raising range, so we don't have very many bluffs. Notice our bluffs are to 29 big blinds out of our 51. Seems a little fun. The opponent bet 10, we make it 29. Cool stuff. What are we folding, though? What are we doing with our misses? Well, king high folds, queen high folds, under pairs fold, pocket 10s folds, pocket kings and queens fold sometimes. Like I said, pairs that are not on the board are not particularly good because we're only drawing to 2 outs. But everything else continues. Now, I will say exploitatively, when you face a bet here, you may want to even overfold a little bit. You don't want to be known as a guy that checks and then check folds, or the person who checks and then checks folds. But when they don't when they don't have anything, because if you check and your opponent knows just to bet because your range is too weak, they'll just run you over. But I think most people aren't betting quite as often as they should from in position. They just are happy to let it go check. But if you're against someone who's aggressive, you got to be pretty call happy. Notice, by the way, against the bigger bet size of 60% pot, where we're folding 40%. So against the small bet, we're folding 19 or 20. Against the bigger size, we're folding 40. That's going to be a consistent pattern here. All right, what about 6-3-2? We check the flop. They bet 4.9. Again, check raising hands that are almost always good but vulnerable. Notice our size is to 16. We're check raising our worst over pairs that we have. Queens, jacks, and tens are almost always good. We're check raising some sixes, almost always good. Then some draws. What are draws? Well, we don't have a whole lot of fives or fours. It's going to be random overcards with backdoor draws, right? So we have some king seven. Random ace highs with spades, I got to presume. Not a lot of draws, though, right? What are we folding here? Well, overcards with nothing. Just stone trash, right? Queen 10, no spade, folds. Jack 10, no spade. 10-9, 10-9, no spades. Folds. Easy. You don't have anything, you fold. What about 10-6-3? We do a lot of checking on this one, remember? We check the flop. Opponent bets 11.8 because it's a dynamic board. Now, again, check raising our best made hands and draws. Best made hands are good tens and better, right? Queens and jacks a lot. Notice aces and kings. And I'm sure tens. And I'm sure sixes. Again, slow play, right? We're protecting our check calling range. This is something a lot of people do not do. Notice ace high has to call the small bet. Also in the previous scenario, ace high is calling small bets, right? Ace high is even calling the bigger bet if it's a good ace high. Notice you can't go around folding the good ace high. Notice king queen even calls a lot. The weaker ace high, though, folds. So we see the weaker ace high is folding, king high, queen high, jack high, all the trash just folds. Even backdoor draws, if you have them, are just off it if they are not very good. But if you do have some sort of decent equity hand that doesn't really want to check call, like queen jack, let's say, or king queen, even ace king sometimes, these hands are putting in the check raise. I got to presume ace king's like with spades probably, and queen queen's probably with spades. But like this queen jack is getting after it every time you have it. Okay? Notice 9s and 8s and 7s are actually used as bluffs sometimes here. That feels a little bit frisky. But hey, sure. 9-8-7. We check. They bet 4.9. This is a spot where, yeah, the board has a lot of draws available, but there's a straight already there. When there's a straight already there, you're going to find that small bets are often used. And the opponent can't just start blasting you because, remember, on the flop, you checked all your sets and your straights. Remember, 9s, 8s, 7s, aces. You have some jack 10s, right? These are all checking a lot here. So you got to continue very often. I can already tell you, you're folding about 20%. Same thing when they bet small. Notice you are calling everything except for the absolute trash. So ace X down here. Funny enough, ace 2 and ace 3 still get in trouble sometimes check raising. Don't forget this corner. Lots of actionable points in this video, huh? We have king highs having to call small bets, especially if they have backdoor draws. Any hand with a jack or a 10 is not going to fold against a small bet. But just total trash can fold. Like ace king can just fold here if you don't have... I mean, it looks like half of them are just folding. Same thing with ace queen. What about jack 7-3? You may ask, why are we showing me so many of these things? I want to try to really drill in your head that when you check, you're not folding so often. Again, facing small bet, you fold 20%. Jack 7-3, if you have nothing, you fold. Anything else, you call. Raise the best hands that are vulnerable, plus some draws. And again, whenever we say plus some draws, I realize that these draws are kind of all over the place and difficult for us humans to clearly define. Like king 10, queen 10, jack 9. I'm sorry, king 10, queen 10, queen 9, queen 8. Are these draws in the traditional sense? Like, not really, because at this stack depth, if you check and they bet 4.9 and you make it 16 and then they shove, you don't really want to have 10-9, because 10-9 actually has some equity. It's pretty good. So you see that 10-9 does not actually raise, whereas a much weaker draw like queen 10 does raise. Okay? See also some low flush draws getting after it, which of course makes sense. If you check raise a flush draw and get jammed, you don't fold at this stack depth. King 10-3. Not a whole lot of raising. We're facing a small bet here. We're check raising just our best hands and draws. That's king 10 for 2 pair, queen jack, calling a lot of other stuff, folding about 20%. Same story. You have nothing, you fold. You have something, you call. Check raise best hands, check raise some draws, call everything except for trash. But again, as you're facing a bigger bet, you get to fold more often. Jack 10-6 against small bet, fold 20%. Same story, right? Call everything, check raise best hands. Jack 10x is a board where you will check raise ace jack and king jack and over pairs basically every time, usually all in. This is a board that nails the opponent's range pretty hard, but these hands are almost always good. Also, king queen and ace queen are really good hands to check rip all in as well. Okay, which is happening. As you see, lots of pairs even continue against the small bet here. Same stuff. As you're facing a bigger and bigger bet, you can fold out the smaller pairs. I suppose I should make that clear, right? Like, so if you have a pocket pair and you're facing a 60% pot bet, you're going to fold it a lot. Whereas if you're facing a 4.9 big blind bet, you don't really fold them much. King 9, 3 all spades. Notice even like pocket 5s, no spade calls. Pocket 6, no spade calls, right? Same story, folding 20%, calling lots of stuff. We're not really check raising this flop all that often because our opponent has lots of flushes in their range. Remember, their pre-flop calling range was wide open, right? Look at all the flushes they're going to have. So when the opponent has lots of flushes, you don't really get to check raise. And notice we have like some flushes, but certainly not a ton. So this is a spot where we are not going to check raise very often at all. Does look like ace-king's just good enough to check raise and get it in, though. So ace-king sets. And then random middle pairs again. Told you these middle pairs are sometimes the draws because quite often they have some number of outs, which is kind of neat. Plus, they don't really mind getting protection. So look, I realize this was a big video. It's a lot. Almost an hour long. I know probably 14% of you made it through this video. But if you made it through, I definitely appreciate you. I'm glad that you're working hard to improve your skills. If you like content like this, we have a ton of it at PokerCoaching.com. I have 40-hour-long cash game and tournament masterclasses where I go through all the common spots you need to know to crush those games. We also have further supplemented it a ton with an advanced tournament course. We have an advanced cash game course coming out very soon, plus a whole lot of other videos on specific spots like this. We actually have a search bar. You can search whatever you want, like when to bluff the river when the 4th spade comes. What are you bluffing with? Stuff like this, right? So imagine whatever you want. If it's not there, you can send us an email and we'll make it. Because I want to make sure every spot is covered, especially if it's a common spot. And I think we've already done that very well in our tournament and cash game masterclass. You can check those out at PokerCoaching.com, and I think you'll enjoy it. Thank you for being here. Good luck in your games. If you haven't clicked the like and subscribe button down below, please do that. Also, I have a new book that just came out, 100 Essential Tips to Master No Limit Hold'em. Check it out. If you made it to the end of this video, I can guarantee you'll like it. You can get it on Amazon or D&B Poker and bookstores. We'll put links in the description below. Thanks again for being here. I appreciate all of you. Hope you learned a lot. And I'll talk to you next time.